Spoiler warning, this video contains spoilers for the Judgment Duology, almost the entire Yakuza series, and also Super Paper Mario somehow. You've officially been warned, so do not blame me. I love video game music. The power of music and its ability to elicit emotion have always remained at the forefront of my mind, as I've listened to a lot of video game music throughout the years. The one studio that seems to constantly prevail in making emotion-driven masterpieces is, of course, Sega. The one thing this studio achieves consistently, regardless of the quality of the games they put out, is their high quality of music. Never once have I ever heard someone even suggest that a Sega soundtrack is of poor quality, and I attribute that mainly to how effective they draw out emotions. Here, watch this. Do you want an upbeat, funky tune that sounds straight out of a radio to underscore your vigilante escapades of spray painting every inch of Nunio Tokyo? Hideki Naganuma has you covered. Perhaps you're looking for something badass and intimidating that makes you feel like the strongest guy in the world, like a fight with God could theoretically be a Sunday afternoon. Well, by God, do we have that. Or maybe you want a song that just, I don't know, makes you cry vigorously and makes you want to write an entire script on why the song is a masterpiece, encapsulating the perfect last stand for ideals you'd never thought you'd see the character in question fight for. We will get back to you. Don't worry. However, today I wanted to explore an emotion that is often sought after in most video game soundtracks: fear. Of course, in a medium as diverse as this, we're not exactly short on music that aims to put the listener in distress. However, you'll probably find most of the time songs of that caliber are often relegated to games wherein the entire atmosphere is one enveloped in fear, i.e., horror games. Games like Little Nightmares, Dead Space, and especially Resident Evil know how to weaponize your sense of sound against you. Of course, there are exceptions. Not all fear-inducing music comes from horror games, or at least not horror-adjacent games. Hell, sometimes the scariest songs come from places you'd never even expect, like, Paper Mario. Or maybe even, screw it, the same Paper Mario game. Are these composers okay? That's a rhetorical question. The answer is probably no. But of course, you can probably guess where I'm going with this. When it comes to fearful music in unexpected places, none take the cake for me like Arcade's true anthem, the theme of Kazuki Soma, Saori Yoshida's own Viper. Let's talk about it. Before getting into the nitty-gritty details of the theme itself, it's worth setting up some context. After all, fear has no reason to work if it's not given a reason. Soma himself eloquently says, first comes pain, then the fear. You have to start with pain.
Fear won't work if you haven't given them a reason. Slap them around, but you do need to keep them conscious. Enough to keep the fear alive. That's how you get what you want to hear. Am I right?
I'm going under the assumption you took after my spoiler warning at the beginning of this video and that you've actually played through the Judgment Duology. and Super Paper Mario. So this segment can serve as a nice little reminder and a slight recontextualization for those who must have forgotten. For those who haven't played the game, this will just serve as a nice intro to Soma's character and some of the key aspects of Lost Judgment. With that being said, Kazuki Soma is one of the central antagonists of Lost Judgment, serving as the leader of a group named RK, which consists entirely, or I think mostly, of ex-Yakuza members. From the outside looking in, it doesn't really look like there's anything to be afraid of when it comes to Soma. One of his most defining traits is that he has a dust allergy, forcing him to hold a napkin under his nose whenever he's in a foreign or dirty environment, for goodness sake. He's got a pretty slim build and he's dressed quite formally, almost like he's never even thought about fighting before. However, that's kind of the point. It's a trick. Underneath this seemingly frail exterior lies a ruthless bastard. Playing into this idea of entrapment is his personality. From what we see of the guy, he doesn't really ever seem to lose his temper, at least not to me. He's cool, collected, and deliberate, which in this context is not necessarily a good thing. The leader of a gang, and he's one of the coldest characters this series has ever seen. Now, don't get me wrong, this series as a whole is absolutely no stranger to villains who keep their cool. Shibusawa, Mine, Baba, Aoki, and Ebina are all villains who fall under this label. Even just sticking to this duology, you've got Mitsuru Kuroiwa, the main villain of the last game, who's more bloodthirsty than Soma, yet is arguably just as cold. The thing that separates Soma from these guys is that, as I mentioned, he never seems to lose that sense of composure and level-headedness. Even after taking several beatings, he stays relatively cold. It's almost as if he's not even human. Now that you've got a decent refresher as to who he is and how he stacks up to other characters that share similar traits to him, what does he even do? Well, in his first scene, he plays it straight. He actually seems pretty friendly at first, telling his gang to stop coming after our main duo of Yagami and Kaito. If you haven't played the games yet, remember these two. In the next scene he's in, we see him holding an ice pick to the neck of an innocent woman. Alright, context time. This is Sawa, a woman who holds some pretty damning information about some killings that have been happening. Soma is technically working under someone to prevent the truth of these killings from coming to light. So naturally, he holds Sawa hostage as both a method of silencing her from exposing the truth, and as a bargaining chip to prevent Yagami's investigation into the case, lest something should happen to her. Now, remember when I said Soma was a ruthless bastard? Yeah. This shot of him holding an ice pick to her neck is the last time she's ever seen alive again. Soma kills this innocent woman and has Yagami knocked unconscious and brought to a warehouse, where he's tortured and Soma delivers the iconic line I said earlier about pain and fear. I can assume you're starting to understand the reality of the situation here. Long as Soma's around, fear and paranoia will be in the air. No one is safe, not the innocents nor the guilty. He can play the role of judge, jury, and executioner at will. No better is this exemplified than the next scene with him. Evidently, just asking Yagami to back off the case doesn't work, so he and Kaito continue, eventually ending up in a bar run by a relative of the true killer of this case. Yagami and Kaito enter the bar and the phone starts to ring. So, here's the thing. Remember when I told you to remember Yagami and Kaito? Well, actually, that's where this comes in. See, Masaharu Kaito, this guy, is sort of the muscle to Yagami's brains. When Yagami's wit and cunning don't get through, Kaito's fists tend to work. He's a strong and burly dude who doesn't go down easily. So, understand that while I show you the following scene.
Soma, よく避けたな。でも残念。アイスピックは女用なんだ。カイトさん RK が何のイニシャルか言ったっけカイトさんくっそレッドナイフこの野郎ソマ
In two swift motions, Soma doesn't just manage to injure Kaito, he takes him out completely while also managing to make fun of the woman he just killed and explain the origin of the name RK with the blood of your best friend on the knife he just stabbed him with. It's about the point I realized this dude was not one to be trifled with, because it was somewhere around here. In the entire game prior to this, we'd never gotten a perfect explanation of Soma's power, and he displays it all in literally 2 stabs. If you need a reason to be scared of the guy, he's giving it all to you right there. He's not just some bad guy that you need to stop, he's a goddamn slasher villain hiding underneath the mask of a collected businessman. That about sets up the context, but after all this, you still gotta put him in his place. So, let's get to the song. As I said earlier, Viper is Soma's boss theme. I'm gonna break the song down into 3 parts. The opening with the ascensions and descensions, the middle with the high string hits and some pretty jarring starts and stops, and the ending part, which sounds more melodic and combines elements of the first two parts. And if you didn't understand what I just said, I'll explain it when we get to it. So let's go through these one by one, starting with the opening. The song opens with this high-pitched melody that seems to keep jumping up and down, constantly resolving to the same note, which serves in immediate contrast with the opening part's central melody, a set of low strings that keep hitting the same note until the fourth beat, where it begins to quickly run down and up. As I've talked about in the order video, these ascensions are crucial in creating a tense atmosphere, because they're naturally associated with anxiety. They're often used in order to instill the sense that something is approaching and that we should be afraid. However, the way this song goes about it is fascinating to me. It runs down and resolves to the key of the song, doing this thrice until the fourth time where it runs up from the key and does the opposite. What I find this does is the 3 runs down create this jarring feeling of a ramp down, before quickly shooting back up to the note it started with, letting you know that you're not quite safe yet. As for the fourth instance, it's cleverly placed at the end to create that aforementioned feeling that something or someone is approaching. Within these drops and rises, there's something else that fascinates me. The notes that are played don't align with what's in the direct order of what would be next in the key. Rather, each note is a half step up or down. It's deliberate because it's not meant to be natural and conventional. It's the bare minimum amount of breathing room working in an already claustrophobic chord structure, which is only enhanced in the second half of the opening when the higher strings kick in to provide a once again combative or discordant melody. Damn, that was a good line read. And that's all without mentioning that the high synth part that started the whole song, which sounds more electronic, still plays under the main melody of strings, which sounds more organic. It works on a plethora of technical levels. The driving force feels like it's an unstoppable push forward, with the bass drum taking the forefront to preserve a sense of speed. The synth in the back serves as an effective counter to the organic sounding strings, creating something of a genre dissonance. The strings in the forefront work to help in both instances, serving as the aforementioned genre dissonance and staying consistent in combination with the drums to create an unstopping feeling melody. And the high strings create an aggressive counterbeat to the already fearful low strings. It's this impeccable combination that I just can't get enough of. As for the second part, I'm gonna sit on it for right now. I want to first discuss the ending melodic part. The reason I'm doing this in this order specifically is because the second part is the epitome of fear in this song. Alas, there's a good reason the song decides to resolve in a more melodic fashion. After all, it's Darkest Before Dawn. That being said, I don't really have much to say on the ending of this song because of how little I think it adds to the overall piece. I think it works as a resolution, as ending with the second high-strung part would be off kilter, but there's not much to analyze here. It's melodic without abandoning that driving sense of fear, because of course it doesn't. It once again rises throughout, this time taking more organic jumps in the chord structure. However, within that context, the high strings in the second half of the conclusion still rise independent of the rest of the beat, once again adding to that sense of something approaching independent of the song. If you need one section to describe to you how effective this song is at creating a tense atmosphere, this is what you take. The part of the song that doesn't even play by its own rules. As for that middle part that I didn't talk about, after your first fight with him, he kicks you clean in the temple and knocks you to the ground cold. Yeah, despite dragging his health all the way down to 0, you don't win this fight. It just stops because Soma's got better things to do than stand here and fight you. And once Soma leaves the bar, you don't see him again until the finale. Speaking of which, let's get into the context for Soma's second, and subsequently last, fight. He's been sent to retrieve and destroy a corpse which would serve as evidence against the aforementioned killer. You know, the one that I mentioned all the way back in like the Soma segment? Yeah. There's a reason I told you to play the games, you know, just trust me when I say that it makes sense in context, and that context is not necessary to understanding why Viper works. As he's doing all this, Yagami and company want to find the corpse so they can bring the killer to light, so destruction of it would mean a dead end. In this race, the two parties end up finding it at relatively the same time, with RK actually finding the body and Yagami and co crashing their party soon after. While your buddies fight off RK, Soma retreats to a nearby freezer, where Yagami follows him to. And as Yagami opens up the freezer, you notice something. Visibility in here is a tough nut to crack. Soma, of course, takes this to his advantage and hides in the frost, attempting to stab Yagami in the face as the start to their second encounter. After some back and forth, the fight kicks off true, and now I want to go back and talk about the second part of Soma's theme. Trust me, this'll all be worth it. The second of the 3 parts of Soma's theme is where a majority of that fear comes from, and is easily the most well-known part of the song. The second part is this discordant nightmare of low strings, followed by sudden stops and switches to these jarring violin hits before going back down to the low strings, rinsing and repeating. It continues like this 3 times until the 2 parts come together for, once again, half steps down in a consistent pulsating beat, until it resolves on the 4th bar, where they rise up slowly and go back down quickly. It is jarring, it is uncomfortable, and above all else, it's scary. So ultimately, what is the message behind Soma's theme? If nothing else, this song is an unstoppable, pulsating cacophony of dissonance, with jarring rises and drops, stops and starts, and a lack of consistency to consistently keep you on your toes. The character it's supposed to score? Well, he's a super effective, jarring, unstoppable bait-and-switch killer with almost no sense of morals or care for those around him. The two are a perfect fit. You want to know what the takeaway is from all this? Be afraid. If nothing else, you should be afraid. You should be very afraid.